Oh, sure. It's a pleasure to be here tonight and to welcome our guests. Our first presentation is from Kyle about the role he is serving as our interim New Hampshire Envirothon program coordinator. Um, Kyle Fennell went to Maryville College in Tennessee. He earned his BA in history and sociology. Of interest to us, beside that, is the fact that he's a permaculture designer. He's been a middle school and high school teacher in several private schools here in the state. And each time it was impressive that his curriculum and the material he was delivering also was inspiring his students and kids in his schools to work on horticulture issues, green initiatives. And this is reflected as well in the fact that he's a Hillsborough County Renewable Energy Initiative Committee member at times. We can look to Kyle for other things that we might need as training or workshops, since I discovered that he has been involved with a low ropes course for corporate events and company outings. So maybe some kind of team building effort there would be fun for me to watch all you people do with Kyle. Um, he does want us in his material. He said it was interesting, and I think it captured a lot of what we feel if you've ever talked with Kyle. That he said he's happy to bring his enthusiasm to prepare tomorrow's conservation leaders by coordinating our education program, the New Hampshire Envirothon. And that's evident with the things in his background that have led him to this. And we're fortunate to have Kyle with us tonight to tell us a bit more about the Envirothon and maybe ways we can all be involved and supportive. Thanks for your time tonight, Kyle, and for everything you're doing. I understand your teacher trainings and workshops are underway, and you're on the road to the Envirothon, all right?
That we are, Chris. Yes. Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction and bio, much more detailed and in depth than I was expecting. But yes, I have a wealth of personal experience and a fascinating story at times that has brought me to this current role, acting as the program coordinator for the New Hampshire Envirothon. And as Chris alluded to, I'm an educator, natural resource steward. I am passionate about conservation, ecological design, land planning, all the sort of things that we as an association of citizens of New Hampshire, we all share, a little bit of these stories, and we share a passion to serve and to commit to working together to really preserve the natural resources and the natural heritage of this great state. And as an educator, that's where I get excited and enthusiastic, because this program, the New Hampshire Envirothon, really has a great, rich history of preparing that next generation, working with the youth of New Hampshire to really get them the experience to and the skill set and the knowledge and the introduction to all of those wonderful realms of learning that can happen in the natural world. That's a 30-year story. And I think that's something that we forget sometimes. But as we celebrate 75 years of the story of conservation in New Hampshire through the Association of Conservation Districts, it's good for me as a new member of this community and this network of servant leaders and passionate stewards and conservationists of this great state. It's important for me to think about the context. So we have an annual educational competition called the New Hampshire Envirothon. We get students, high school students around the state. Any high school age student around the state is invited to form a team of 5 and test their knowledge in the realms of aquatic ecology, land use and soils, forestry, wildlife, and we always throw in a 5th, a current land-based problem, a question, a scenario that those young Granite Staters, those high schoolers, as future landowners and voting citizens of the state, they're going to have to wrestle with how to conserve and protect the natural resources in New Hampshire. So we always challenge them to think ahead and look at what is in front of them and to get creative and share that passion and their knowledge. So this year has been historic. We've decided to go virtual. We are hosting this event remote this year. We've had a smaller group of teams sign up, register this year, which we were expecting. You know, it's been a hard year for schools, many schools, you know, transitioning back to in-person versus hybrid versus remote. You know, it's been taxing on students and teachers, and that's what we've gotten feedback from our educational partners, our educators across the state. So it's going to be a different year, but we're having an event and we're very excited about that. As Chris alluded to, also, we're very busy. We're still supporting our educators across New Hampshire by giving them access to a wonderful collection of digital resources so that they can use our collected wisdom and expertise in the classroom. And we're also providing webinars and recorded presentations so that they can continue to use current information and access our network of volunteer natural resource professionals. We have a great network of long-term volunteers. Many of the wonderful people that act as advisors to me in my professional role as program coordinator, a lot of those partners and professionals have been serving in Envirothon for over a decade. And they all have a much better picture of this story, and they've really carried the programs, and they've entrusted me to coordinate it this year. But this is a program that really thrives on the generosity of natural resource professionals, partners with federal and state agencies and other nonprofits, University of New Hampshire Cooperative Extension, NRCS, of course, the association, definitely. So that is the greatest need right now, moving forward. You know, we've got participants, we've got the know-how, we're going to have an event, but what we need to continue on and continue the story of New Hampshire Envirothon to the next 30 years, because we're looking ahead already. We need more stories of people getting involved, getting connected, and a great story. I've heard so many great stories from those volunteers that have come back year after year. So many of them got started just by judging, acting as a judge, volunteering 30 minutes or an hour of their time in late May 2021, volunteering a little bit of their time to listen to our student participants present on the current issue. This year, our current issue is climate change in New Hampshire water resources. It's a very, very apt and pressing topic. You know, our state is experiencing an abnormally dry season. It's been rainy and dreary today, but that's actually kind of subpar compared to past years. So it's an important topic this year, and this is a great year to hear what our student participants have to say, hear their solutions or their recommendations on what we can do about it, and get an introduction to really what the program, the New Hampshire Envirothon, has to offer. Because we're seeing, you know, with 30 years of a history, we're seeing our next generation of conservation leaders and teachers arrive. We've got a teacher that we're in contact with who was a student, right? Participated when he was in high school. So we're developing generations of participants, and that's exciting, and that's going to continue our story. So if you're interested in learning more about it, we've got a great website. We're always putting up content. I'll be sending out, we'll be recruiting volunteers for oral presentations for our competition this year. The competition is remote, as I said, it's a week long. May 21st, on Friday, May 21st, we're going to kick that off. We're going to have a little opening celebration. We'll have an introduction to all of our judges, all of our volunteers, because Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the following week, the 24th through the 26th, that's when we'll be scheduling presentations for our teams to answer the question of what can New Hampshire do and their local communities do to address climate change and protect our water resources. But I'll leave that for now, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Kyle, how many people do we have to chase through the woods to sign up to help judge?
I'm looking for a good dozen. That'd be great. I think if I had a dozen volunteers, that would cover all of the possible time slot scenarios. We're trying to work with our educators. We know that schedules are very hectic this year. I have a couple who are still remote personally, and then their students, some are hybrid. It's a little bit of a logistic nightmare, but a dozen volunteers would cover, the approximate I'm expecting 2 hours of presentations. So that would give us some flexibility and provide a diversity and, allow people to get a sense of what our students have to offer in response to the question and see what the program is.
Kyle, how many do you have so far?
Currently, we have 5 schools participating. That's 5 teams participating from 4 schools. So we've only got 3 high schools. We've averaged in the past 10 plus, and we've been in contact with several new schools this year. And while that number is low compared to past years, in 2020 we had no competition, so we had no schools. So we're still looking at it as more than last year. We're positive. We've got a lot of interest actually from middle schools. And we allow middle school teams to participate. We do have a middle school team. We have 2 others that are possibly going to participate. And we challenge our middle school teams to follow along, do the best they can. They get exactly the same challenges as our high schoolers. And when they come to present, they're oftentimes very impressive and surprise the judges with their responses to the topics.
That sounds great, but I'm wondering also about how much participation you have for the judging.
Oh, as of right now, I'm sorry. As of right now, we have a small group of 3 or 4. So if we could get another half dozen or so, that would cover.
Thanks. We have one from Ringe that typically joins, and I'm hoping he will be in amongst them.
Wonderful. What I would find very helpful, if you could, if you know of anyone, please feel free to forward their contact along to me. I'll put my Envirothon address in the chat here. It's just admin@newhampshireenvirothon.org. And of course, our website is newhampshireenvirothon.org. And we've got links there to previous recordings, webinars that we've been doing. We have one more left coming up next Monday on the 10th. We will be having our last webinar for this season, this on topic of forestry. A great presentation that's coming from that resource group. This year, the forestry competition challenge is going to be related to a forest inventory of a selected site. Teams are going to be challenged to go out in their local communities, select a 30-foot by 30-foot wooded plot, do an inventory, take observations. It's going to be a really interesting kind of twist on what we do on a traditional year. We've really try to think outside the box and create a great experience for our participants this year. So we're excited about it. And I think our educators that have the means to really stick with it this year, they're excited as well. I think, unfortunately, it's just, they're few and far between following the stress of this past school year.
Sounds to me like the schools participating have your undiluted attention and energy. So I think the schools participating are really fortunate this year. I'm sure that's the case.
I'm sure
Kyle
that,
and the steering teams I've been sitting in on their meetings, and they just have done an awesome job. And the materials are not just good. I think that there's a lot of schools that may just audit, and dive in, but not necessarily take the test. But there are materials that really will stand the test of time. There's examples of, showing, a water a table that shows how streams carve through sediment, and learning how to interpret the different layers of soil. So we've got kids digging soil pits and identifying floodplains and learning how to use online tools to identify what type of soil is in their backyard of their school. So, I mean, I think we've got some really cool tools that not only are good for young people, but they're good for citizens as well, just to learn more about natural resources, their water, their fish and wildlife resources. And so I think it's a great tool and a great program, and really encourage folks to think about participating. I've been a judge for the student presentations. They last about 10 minutes or so, and the kids have PowerPoints that put some college kids to shame. They really do a great job. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to get young people engaged with natural resources. So, and Kyle's really stepped up, coming in, to this program in a critical time for us, and being able to work through some pretty extraordinary challenges. So, Kyle, I think we all owe him our appreciation for the great job he and the team's done.
Some of the best part is that some of these kids are going to go on, or students, I should say, are going to go on, and this is their career. This is going to turn on something in them that makes it be real life, like the whole college and career readiness thing that we should be thinking of for students in school nowadays. And it's the kind of thing you just won't know, but you'll feel it, as the world of conservation and all the jobs and ancillary positions are filled by people that participated like this. I'm sorry, though, I think Mr. Miller, you had your hand, the hand icon up. You had something to ask him as well.
That was an applause hand, actually, but I do.
Oh, we can do that. Okay.
I want to take the opportunity, since you brought me up, to thank Kyle for stepping in this unbelievably difficult transition period. And I totally agree that this is an opportunity for the youth of New Hampshire to engage with the future. And we understand the challenges that you faced. And I thank you ever so much for stepping in, taking the reins when we needed it most. And I'm sure that beyond this, we're going to have continued a positive experience with Envirothon. It's a terrific program. So thank you for your contribution. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
So we've got Kyle's email in the chat. You can figure out how to find him if the chat evaporates. So to go to nhenvirothon.org. So I would encourage you to take the vibe that he's given us tonight and see if we can't turn out some judges or some other volunteer support for Kyle. Any other last minute questions or ideas or things to share with him before we move on in our program? All right. Again, thanks, Kyle, for your time tonight, and have fun with the last part of your presentations before you get to the real deal.
Yeah, take care.
Now we move to Tara Sad and Bob Hefner, and we're interested to hear what they're going to share with us about ways to communicate and reach out and work with the legislative process, which is something that will grow more and more important, just like conservation issues are taking more of a front seat. So the communication pieces and more ways we can communicate our messages and express our needs and work mutually, the better for everyone. Tara Sad moved to Walpole, New Hampshire over 30 years ago. She served 10 years in the NH House of Representatives. 4 of those, she was chair of the Environment and Agricultural Committee, and 4 as ranking member. While in the House, she also served on the Joint Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules and the Dairy Task Force, in addition to chairing the state's Rural Affairs Commission and the Milk Producers Emergency Relief Fund Board. Since 2016, she shared the position of Agriculture and Rural Affairs Policy Consultant with Council of State Governments, the Eastern Regional Conference, with her working partner of over 15 years, here with us tonight also, Bob Hefner. Bob has his BS in Business Administration and MS in Management. He served his military obligation in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves. Bob served 8 years on the Hudson Conservation Commission, 2 as chair, and 8 on the Municipal Budget Committee. He's worked in the computer industry for 36 years in materials, production control, procurement, and distribution. That was with Hewlett Packard. After he retired from there, he was elected to the NH House of Representatives, where he served for 10 years. 4 of those, he was chair of Environment and Agriculture, 4 as ranking member, and 2 years on the Hillsborough County Executive Committee. He's been appointed to several various committees and commissions related to these topics. Bob is director of the Hillsborough County Farm Bureau and has been active in judging for the FFA. Tara and Bob joined forces to share a role with the Council of State Governments, East Agricultural and Rural Affairs Policy Advisors. So for all this and then some, thank you both for the ways you've served and filled many roles and many ways of civic commitment and the volunteer spirit with your skills and talents. So lots to share from you tonight. We appreciate your time and everything you've done leading up to this, being our guest. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's nice seeing some friendly faces that I remember from years past.
Good.
Bob, do you want to start off?
Sure. When Tara and I left the legislature, we had been very active, both of us, in the Council of State Governments as legislators. And we thought it was a wonderful organization. And the advisor, the agriculture policy advisor they had left. And the job was open. And in fact, it was open before we left the legislature. And Tara and I, while still legislators and not getting paid for it, put together a program for our annual meeting, which was in Quebec that year with the Council of State Governments. And when it was all done, Tara said to me, "Do I have a deal for you?" And she wanted us to go and take that job on a permanent basis. So we applied for it and we got hired, and here we are.
Yes, here we are.
Yeah.
5 years later, we're still together. I mean, after 15 years, but still.
Yeah. And we also spent 10 years in the legislature together. The majority changed every term while we were in the legislature. And every time it changed, Tara and I would get up and change chairs and nothing else would change for us.
Because of course, Bob is a Republican and I'm a Democrat. And so, which makes the relationship even more interesting considering the tenor that's going on in Concord and Washington and everything these days. You don't even talk to one another from what I understand, but we talked, we're still talking. So yeah, it's good, it's good. Let me talk a little bit about Council of State Governments and what it is. Council of State Governments is a membership organization that all states belong to. They pay dues to our organization, in exchange for which they get services like webinars, conferences, research done, conferences. We put on conferences and people come, filled with all kinds of wonderful information to assist the three branches of government, not just legislators, but the executive branch and the judicial branch as well. We give trainings to these people on how to better communicate and how to talk to the press and things like that. But we are a resource for them if they need information on what another state is doing for policy issues or for bills and things like that. We share all that information with people, which is nice.
Okay, and what I would add to that is it's a regional organization. There is a central organization out of Kentucky, but it is broken into 4 regions in the country. So Tara and I are the policy advisors on agriculture and rural issues to the Northeast. And when we say that, it's 11 states from Maryland and Delaware up through Pennsylvania and New York and over to Maine. So we've got the 11 Northeastern states. We also have 5 Eastern Canadian provinces that are part of our organization, as well as Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands. And people often ask, how did Puerto Rico get in with the Northeast? And it's because no one else asked them except us. So that's what we have now. And our expertise is agriculture and rural issues.
The one thing that we missed so much with COVID that we enjoyed doing for years was the State House visits. Every year we would be able to go as a group of policy advisors to all of the state houses. It's so fascinating to go into all of these buildings to see how different they all are, how differently they run their sessions and make laws and bills, and yet how similar they are as well. And we would go in and we would talk to the chair of the ag committees, and we would sit in on some of their meetings and sessions, and we would talk to the speakers of the House and the Senate presidents and just wander around these beautiful buildings. So I miss that. I miss going to Annapolis, Maryland and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, and to Tara's point, the legislatures in all 11 of those states do the exact same thing, but do it differently. So it is really interesting the way they do things.
Right. And of course, we think that the Agriculture Committee is the best of all committees in any of the state houses. And so the people who are members of those committees, we know, and we've known them for years, and they're our buddies. And so it's sort of like old home days. You go and you say, hello, Judy Schwenk, Senator from Pennsylvania, how are you today? And so, yeah, I miss those a lot. We're trying to do Zoom meetings, but it's not the same as face-to-face.
Right.
And that's another thing that CSG does, is we bring people together and they sit around and they talk about problems that they're all having in their states and come up with solutions, whether it be legislative or just common sense. It really does help. So it's fun.
And we try to pick topics that we're going to work on that the majority of states are interested in. There's always some things that are unique to states, and we really don't get involved with those. But the ones that are a big issue everywhere, and I'll use rural broadband as an example, or lack of rural broadband, we tackle that. The way we figure out what we're going to do or work on is we ask the legislators on our Capitol visits, what are the big issues in your states? And after a while, you get a consensus of the things that people want to work on.
The hottest issue lately, and one that probably the conservation districts would be interested in, is the new carbon sequestration idea, the idea of carbon markets. And how do you quantify the amount of carbon that is sequestered and held in the ground? what farming methods do you use in order to actually get this accomplished, not only in agriculture, but in forestry as well. So we just had a 2-day webinar delving into that issue, which was very, very, very interesting. And that is pretty much on the tip of everyone's tongue right now. That is the topic that everyone wants to know about and is very curious about.
Yeah.
A lot to learn, but with the current administration, it seems like it might get some traction. So we're still digging into that. So we'll see.
Yeah, and that one, we had two, count them, two, commissioners of agriculture that participated.
Right, right. So that's just another example of how we cross over the various branches of government, the executive and the legislative, which is interesting. Another thing that we talked about and had a big policy summit on down in Providence, Rhode Island 2 years ago was agritourism and the right to farm. Just the ability to keep some of these farms afloat by allowing them to have events, to have pumpkin sales and weddings and things like that, is good for the farm, but sometimes the neighbors start complaining and the zoning commissions in the various towns that are affected don't know how to deal with it. So we had an interesting 2-day seminar on right to farm and agritourism that a lot of people really appreciated. We just had one because of the COVID food chain disruption that happened last year. Remember not being able to get toilet paper or any kind of canned goods for a while. We had a very interesting webinar on regional food systems and how we in the New England area need to get together, cross state lines, and actually figure out how we can grow our own food, transport our own food, and sell our own food to our own people, and not rely on the transportation that could be disrupted coming in from California or Florida or Mexico or China. So
And process our own food.
and process our own food, exactly. Processing is a big problem too. Yeah, meat processing, don't even get me started.
And during that same period, we had the food box program, and Tara and I wrote a couple of blogs on that.
I was curious about the food box program. You know, you hear how wonderful it was and how they were buying all this food from the farmers to put in boxes and distribute to people who needed it at the time. And I saw a lot of information about who the farmers were and who was being paid for the food, which was great. But I didn't know how it was being distributed and by whom. And so I did a whole, state by state research. And some of the stories I heard from some of these food bank managers and directors in all the states, they were really not happy campers. The first 2 rounds of the food box program were great because they tended to use local distributors and local food distributors to get the food out to the people that needed it. But then the 3rd round and the 4th round, they went to the Cisco's and they went to Texas and they went all over the country and just got rid of the local ingredient completely, which was a shame. And it was upsetting to a lot of the people who had worked so hard to get it started. I mean, it was a good program,
But there's a reverse to that. I interviewed a farmer in Delaware, and he was root vegetables, and it was a big farm, and all of his produce went to the restaurant industry, restaurant and hotel, which had shut down. So he had no outlet for the food that he had already grown. So he was really happy with the food box program and credited it for saving his farm.
and yet we hear of New Hampshire farmers who are used to selling at farm stands and farmers markets and things like that, and have a healthy distribution system there. And they didn't even want to get involved in providing produce to the food box program because they had enough of a market getting a nice price. And so they were very happy. Thank you very much. So we're lucky here in New Hampshire that we have the direct to consumer sales that we do for the farms. That keeps a lot of people afloat, and it gives us consumers really fresh, healthy food. So I'm looking forward to them opening up again. So that's what we do. We still have fun doing it. I miss the traveling. That was always good. But, you know, delving into issues and letting people know what's going on, it's fun.
That
We are
comes
at the
through in
be-
your presentation, that's for sure.
we are at the beginning of talking about carbon sequestration.
Yes.
So I may be calling you to get some advice on
Okay.
who do we talk to, when,
Right.
type of stuff. Once we
Exactly.
get our act together, we
Yeah.
see what the federal legislations are really going to look like.
Right.
We
They're
are
still working on
viewing conservation districts as the third part, could be the third party
Mhm.
to measure the carbon that's in the soil.
I think that that would be the perfect group to actually be out there in the field and know what they're talking about. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
There are a lot of details left to be ironed out, and where the money's coming from is also always there in the room.
And if you talk to different farmers, you'll probably get different answers on what they think of the programs.
Right. But if it works, if it manages to sequester carbon out of the atmosphere and help save the planet and is good for the crops and good for everything, why not? So it's good. So we'll keep you informed on that. Is there anything else that the New Hampshire conservation districts are thinking about now that is a hot issue that we could maybe take back to our legislators and members and talk about in some of our conferences?
Oh, yes. I heard a year ago, Sean Jasper was really hot on local dairy producers having specialized
Yeah.
marketing for New
Exactly.
Hampshire milk.
Exactly.
And I don't know that that's really gotten much traction. But I'm thinking that maybe the arena is a little too small, maybe in New England dairy or Northeast at least,
Mhm.
might be a better prospect to have some sort of specialization to
Right.
promote dairy, because we are really in crisis.
Yes, we are. Yes,
And
we are.
I'm thinking that as good intentioned as that was, that maybe it was a little narrow view, and broadening it out might be more successful.
When
And-
Bob and I were in the legislature, we actually had a bill that tried to make New Hampshire milk and only New Hampshire milk, have that as a label to promote it. And there was problems with interstate commerce. There were very angry processors in New York State that came and actually threatened us. The exciting things that happened. But yes, that was a little too narrow, I think. Because as we all know, milk, the processing of milk in our region is regional. It crosses borders all the time. The milk trucks go back and forth, Vermont to New Hampshire, Massachusetts all the time. So identifying exactly where that hundredweight of milk actually came from, it's hard. But it would be nice to get a system where our local farmers can get more money, because that's what they actually need. And we also need to stop this not milk from being able to call it milk on the shelves. That is so annoying and ridiculous. I don't know why that hasn't stopped yet. It seems like it should be illegal, but anyway, just another thing.
One of the other groups that works with the conservation districts is we like most other states have a state conservation commission. And it's a great group. It represents state agencies that are natural resource agencies, the town conservation commissions, and representatives from the county conservation districts. We haven't had an executive director for 8 years, and we're in the process of hiring one now. So that's one of those things that I'd like to tie in with you on, is just to, as we stand up that position again, we could certainly use your experience and advice on working with other states to
Oh,
look over
wonderful.
their shoulder to see
Of course, we'd be happy to.
opportunities.
We'd be happy to.
And if you want to submit your application and resume tomorrow, we'd appreciate it.
We always share jobs, Bob and I. Anyway, it's great seeing you all. Any other questions from anybody?
I have a quick one. In your travels and now Zoomers, you're Zooming, what state or where are you seeing somebody ahead, or where's some real progressive or some real solid kind of work going on with agritourism?
With agritourism, well, actually Rhode Island was doing really well with agritourism. Remember, Bob?
Yeah,
That's sort of why we were down there.
yes,
because
and
yeah.
Pennsylvania as well.
Pennsylvania, yes. There were some states, I believe, that were having problems with it. Didn't Massachusetts have some problems trying to get some legislation to allow farmers to actually hold events and things on their farms?
Yeah, I kind of think that was resolved, but
Yeah.
they did have some problems there.
Right. One of the main problems with agritourism, of course, is insurance, liability.
Right.
Insurance. And farmers really aren't savvy as to how much coverage they actually need, what to protect themselves from. You know, someone breaks their neck falling off of a hay wagon, you know, you could be in big trouble if you don't have heavy duty insurance. So,
Right.
Maryland has done a pretty good job with agritourism as well.
yes, they have a wonderful rural caucus in Maryland. So active.
Oh,
I mean, hundreds and hundreds of people, and they have the most fascinating webinars and seminars, and a really dynamic director. We've had her speak at a few of our conferences, and just innovative stuff, and really fighting for the rural people, you know, which I think needs to be done everywhere.
interesting.
Yes, it is interesting. I thought.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Other questions from the group here? We have a Bill Fosher enters into the chat. Dairy processors couldn't segregate NH milk from other milk. They can trace it right to a specific bulk tank if there's an antibiotic trace.
Right, they can do that, but I mean, the actual, the truck that transports it tends to have more bulk tank, you know, more than just one
There you
farm's worth. And so they commingle it, and that's the problem.
And they take the sample before they commingle it.
Right, right.
Mm.
Which is also the problem with the antibiotics. You'd have to dump the whole truckload. But yeah,
I was
for
being
dairy,
sarcastic about the contention that the processors were saying they couldn't possibly keep New Hampshire milk separate from anything else, but
that's what we've
if
said.
if they wanted to badly enough, they could.
They could.
But they don't. That's the problem. They really, really don't. And it's the processors that are, I think, the thing standing in the way of getting Sean's initiative actually underway, which is a shame.
And the grocery stores aren't exactly knocking down the walls to help us get it done either.
No,
Oh,
the
I'm not
shelf
sure
space,
they've-
anything like that, you know, they're limited as to who they want on their shelves. There's money that changes hands for the actual shelf footage, and they don't want it to be shared. So a depressing statistic: dairy farms lost in the U.S. Fell by more than half from 2002 to 2019. So we've lost half of them. And yet the amount of milk has increased. The number of cows has remained the same or increased. The herds are just getting bigger and they're moving to Texas or Colorado, where they can just range all over the, the sands out there, and not have any hills to get in the way.
I just read in Horde's Dairyman, the Texas is the fastest growing dairy state.
And
Water to feed dairy cows, right? A typical dairy cow drinks 30 to 50 gallons of water
Exactly.
a day, and you put them right where there's arid conditions. That makes all kinds of sense.
Bob and I were in Arizona on a conference field trip, and we went to a dairy farm in the middle of the desert. We were driving in a bus for like a half hour outside of Scottsdale or wherever we were. I think it was Scottsdale. And in the middle of this desert, there were 20,000 milking cows. Not a crop to be seen growing anywhere. Where they got the water, I have no idea. But it was almost completely roboticized. Everybody, all the cows had chips and they had, just wandered in and got milked. They milked themselves. And it was terrifying to me. It was like a science fiction thing. They should not be in the desert. These cows should not be in the desert when it's 120 degrees outside.
It's just for them to drink, and that doesn't count what
Right.
they do to wash up and everything, because those robots wash themselves every so often.
Yes. Complete waste of water and, why? It was scary to me. It was scary to me. Oh, well.
I'd like to invite you guys to participate with NHACD in the future a lot more actively, because what I'm hearing here is that New Hampshire is really too small a slice of the picture. And
Exactly.
that the Northeast region is more a practical approach.
Right. That's why.
We're talking dairy here, but I think we're talking all the agricultural aspects together.
Exactly. And forestry. Right.
Well, yeah.
Right.
So I really appreciate your presentation tonight.
Of course. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we didn't bore you too much.
Oh, no, we could
Thanks.
listen to this for a long time. I would like more specific stories and
There
and
are a
all.
lot of them. There are a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
them. Thank you very much for
And
having
if
us.
you don't mind, I think I'll sit and listen in on Rob and Josh.
Sure.
I've got to go outside and let the horse out of the stall. He's been locked in trying to eat his hay. I'm going to let him out right now. I can hear him out there winning. So it was nice seeing you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tara.
Bye.
Okay, Farm Bureau, you're up next here. Thanks for your time being here. We have Robert Johnson II, New Hampshire Farm Bureau's Policy Director from Pittsfield, New Hampshire. Rob oversees the grassroots development process for the New Hampshire Farm Bureau. He supports the Farm Bureau members in developing policy positions, which he uses to advocate for New Hampshire farmers at the local, state, and federal levels. Thanks for being here, Rob. And with you is Josh Marshall, the New Hampshire Farm Bureau Communications Director from Boscawen, New Hampshire. Josh is the editor of the New Hampshire Farm Bureau's newspaper, The Communicator, and maintains the organization's communications channels and website. And I will tell you, I bet I am not alone. Yeah, that's the one. I am not alone. This paper, I look forward to it like crazy. This issue alone, Hosta Heaven, Boscawen Town Pound restored, livestock stuck in the Suez Canal. I mean, the stories in here, and then Heron reading about Three Rivers Farm Alliance awards, and the stories that you research and the information you put together in this thing is just it's a newspaper and a half. Thank you for all it takes to get it to us. And yeah, Bob, let's do it again. There we go. Thank you for all you both do, and thanks for your time tonight being here. So you guys are up. What you got?
I don't know if Rob, you want me to start off or? So I don't know. I mean, how much of, I imagine probably there's quite a few Farm Bureau members here. Obviously, some of you have the newspaper, so I'll just give a brief overview of what we do. We're also a membership organization. New Hampshire Farm Bureau is made up of the 10 county farm bureaus here in the state. And our mission is to advocate for agriculture and to educate the public about it. So, Rob and I both sort of spearhead one half of those missions. Rob's with the advocacy, obviously, and my role is more in the education and promotion of our membership. And I think what's really cool about Farm Bureau is when folks say Farm Bureau stands for something, what they really mean is that 3,000 members stand for something, and everything's really driven from the membership. Our jobs are to work for you guys and to try to, promote the things you want promoted and hold the positions that our members want held, whether it's working with Bob and Tara when they were in the legislature or the current E&A committee. I think one thing that's interesting, I meant to ask during your presentation, I just did an interview with the current E&A chair, Howard Pearl, and that committee seems to just ooze bipartisanship. He was raving about how well the Democrats and Republicans work together in that committee. And I don't know if there's something special about agriculture and the environment or just the folks who tend to be in that committee, but that's something that I've certainly taken away from my time here.
Agriculture is nonpartisan.
Yeah, it's really great to see the work that gets done on behalf of farmers, foresters, landowners in the state, and the amount of people who are looking out for them. So our job is really to hear the problems and the positives from our membership, and to share with the greater public the good things that are happening, and to work to be the voice of agriculture in the legislature. So I don't know if Rob wants to speak a little bit more towards his specific role and maybe more of that. I'll be here to answer questions throughout the time.
Okay, thanks, Josh. One of the things that Josh mentioned to me that you might be interested in hearing about are, what are the important issues that we work on and are important to farmers. And we've kind of got, I'd say, taking the high level view, 4 specific areas that are particularly important that we focus a lot of time on, cornerstone issues. And one of them is our current use assessment program. I mean, I think you're all aware that, that allows our farmers to keep their land, not having to sell it in order to pay the property taxes. And it's real important. And there's most years there's legislation relative to current use. This year there are a couple of bills. One was there's been a formula used on the forestry side in a DRA, which the current use board is administratively attached. They had deemed that the formula, that they couldn't release it as proprietary, and there was legislation filed to require that they provide it to the public. And we and the timberland owners and the other organizations that follow the program closely wholeheartedly support that. And in a matter of full transparency, it's important. If the general public thinks that we're trying to hide something, we're going to lose our program, and it's just too important. So, and I think as you held up the communicator, and as part of that, we've teamed up with the timberland owners and the Forest Society and others and we want to update the current use landowner survey, because it's that important. I think, as Bob can tell you, in any legislation, when they're making their decisions, is key. So that's one of our cornerstone issues is current use. I attend every current use board meeting, and it's probably the number one issue that I get specific questions on. Another area that's important is I'll call on the education front, and that's our support for cooperative extension and the research and on-farm study that they provide. And then along with that, I'll group in funding for the College of Life Sciences and Agriculture at UNH and the Thompson School as well. And I give you a little idea. Farm Bureau came about, I mean, the corporate extension came about as a result of Farm Bureau that were tied together back in around 1910, 1915, when the corporate extension was first being formed. The federal government said to counties throughout the country, if there's an organization formed showing us as a farmer, showing us a commitment in your county, then we'll supply a county agent to your county. So out of that, that's how Farm Bureau came into existence. The county Farm Bureaus were formed to bring a county agent to the area of the county to provide that, the latest in agricultural research and information. So we've always had a tie to corporate extension. Many of our county Farm Bureaus, the agent, or now as we call them, the educator, sit on the board in an advisory role for just to enhance that communication between the two. Another cornerstone is the Department of Agriculture, making sure that the department has the resources they need. Department of Agriculture is our voice. By our, I mean agriculture's voice within state government, and it's key. There are a number of times I've reached out to the commissioner, whether it be the current commissioner, or whether it was Commissioner Merrill or Commissioner Taylor, if we were having an issue with another department, and asking them if they could reach out on behalf of us in agriculture to solve an issue, because within agencies, they have that credibility, and it's key. There have been, I believe it's in the last 30 years, at least 3 bills that would have consolidated the Department of Agriculture within another state agency. And we've always, Farm Bureau and ag supporters in the state have always aggressively come out in opposition to that. Because if we don't want to see that day, we will lose a key voice in state government, and direct pipeline to other agencies and the governor as well. And the other, I'd say the fourth cornerstone within Farm Bureau is our advocacy on behalf of landowners. We're one of the, I would say, other than the timberland owners, we're the 2 organizations that are looking out for landowner and watching landowner issues, which are very important to all of agriculture. I'll give you an example. In this session, there was a bill that in fishing game that would have required relative to live action game cameras, and we didn't take a position on the live action piece, but our position was, well, if you're going to allow these live action game cameras, they ought to be put up with the permission of the landowner, whether it be an individual landowner or a state agency that owns land or anything like that. And at the hearing, the department thought, well, they were kind of shocked that you already didn't need permission. And common law probably tells you somebody does need permission to put anything on your property. But these, as I think any landowner can tell you, I can tell you on my farm, I find game cameras all the time and nobody asked me. And I'll tell you, many of our members are finding the same thing. So we believe there needs to be something in statute that specifically speaks to it. And we've written a letter to the Fish and Game Commission asking that they promulgate rules. This is based on a suggestion from the Fish and Game Committee itself. And anyway, we're in the process of doing that. So that's just kind of, those are the 4, again, I'm looking on the high view of things we work on. And I'll leave it at that. And you have any other questions on other issues? I think you're all aware, I know Dick was at the initial hearing. There is a bill that I know you're all interested in relative to soil health, and that's moving through this session. We initially had concerns with it. Our concern was, we basically thought that the districts had the authority anyway. And the way the initial bill was written, there was language, I think you're all aware that the words climate change they're real lightning words. And the districts are funded through the legislatures, through the county delegations. And we thought if there was some of that language that would draw an unneeded attention, it could affect the potential funding for the local districts. And anyway, the bill has been massaged and amended a bit, and I think it appears everybody's pretty happy with it, and I think it's going to do what everybody wanted it intended to do in the first place. It's just, we think that's at with language that's not going to cause other problems. I'll leave it at that and be happy to answer.
I'll just offer something off of,
For all the work that you folks do in the districts. I know you're volunteers as well as our members are, and we all appreciate it. Actually, there's one thing I wanted to leave you with. I thought you'd find interesting. I was reading an article this past week, and it was Georgia. The Georgia Farm Bureau just has a new president that just took over. And in the article I read, and I think it's indicative of and true for all farmers in state, and I think it's true for the farmers that you folks know and work with. But he said, and he was talking about his farm, and he said, I don't inherit this place from my grandparents. I'm borrowing it from my grandkids, and we've got to take care of it. And I really believe that that's, I know I believe that as far as my farm goes for my children and their children. And I think most, if not every farmer in New Hampshire and across the nation thinks the same way. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one piece to what you said, Rob, about, sort of the language of the bills and how important that is. We have a policy development committee and all these committees that they'll sit there for hours and go over language, whether it should be a comma or a semicolon or is or can or shall. And before I came to Farm Bureau, I did not understand how important that was. And because we're putting laws that are going to last a lot longer than us, and somebody might interpret that language different. So I think that's really important to both, the legislative side and the advocacy side of the work that volunteers do to make sure that they're looking at all the repercussions of what could happen, no matter what the bill is. But I've just always been impressed by the work that our members do in that, and the assistance they get from Rob to make sure that we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. We do. We have a very thorough policy development process that is, as Bob can tell you, he sits on a dairy committee and other committees. We go over language ad nauseum, and it's not something from the top down. It isn't our board of directors making a vote and saying we're going to take this position. It's something that's been come from the members up. It has been voted on at the county level. If it's successful there, it goes to the state annual meeting. And if adopted there, then it becomes our policy that I use as my Bible to advocate for our membership.
It's a great process.
Last year, I noticed that people that were testifying for that bill got us confused with DES and NRCS, and they had no idea what we were. And then I noticed all the legislators were looking at their pads, their iPads, as people were talking. They were doing fact checking. So what we've done is we've started position papers, and each district has been assigned a position paper to write. And then at the annual meeting, they're going to get voted on. And then we're going to put it on our website. So in the future, we don't have to be present at a hearing for our information to get there, because we will inform all the legislators in that committee where to go to find what our position is and what we really do. And hopefully that'll cut down the confusion that happened last year.
Dick, I'd like to commend you on a number of things, but principally it's this forum of bringing together partners that really expand the reach of NHACD. And Rob, I agree with you completely that we need to have the broader audience of participants. And I was at that hearing that Dick just alluded to, there was some conflict between the Farm Bureau view and NHACD view. And I don't think there really is that conflict. I think it was an aberration of the situation. So I really commend this opportunity for the Zoom in on conservation to be this avenue where we can actually communicate together on our commonalities and work together for the achievement that we all like to see achievement in the broader community. And how we define that is going to diverge between our individual segments. But if we don't talk together, we're not going to achieve that. And I think this zoom in on conservation is just an ideal opportunity to do just that. And so, Dick, I want to thank you very much. I think this is a great opportunity. And Rob and Bob, I think you've presented yourselves well. I'd like to see this continue in greater extent. Thank you.
Well, this is our 12th show, so we start our new season next month. So we're planning on doing that. What I'd like to do is have everybody that we've invited to this Zoom when we start getting back together again, hopefully at our annual meeting in November, is invite everybody for 3 hours so that we can all exchange more ideas, exchange papers, and have a program that we get some uniformity in our thoughts. When FDR passed the bill for soil conservation districts, he liked it because it was landowners helping landowners, and landowners were in charge of the priorities at the county level, and we're still doing that. So we need to hear from Farm Bureau people what the priorities on their farms are. Right now, we're getting into no-till and cover cropping and soil health and preventing erosion that way. Agriculture is rapidly changing from the plow to planting in the sod because we have the technology to do it now. We have equipment available for Farm Bureau members to rent, to try out the new system. Just renting the equipment instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars on equipment, and then they can decide if they like the new system or not. So we're there to help, and we need to get the word out because I think we're a very underutilized resource.
Dick, is there a list available of what equipment is available in what counties? Because I got to tell you, I've taken advantage of it in Rockingham and Stratford, and I'm in Merrimack, and they've always been good if there wasn't a farmer in a county where the equipment was, in at least letting me use it. But I'm curious, we'd be happy to put in the communicator something up, a list of that's something you folks think makes sense.
Well, there's my task for tomorrow morning.
Well, I think if you look on the website of NHACD, you'll find that availability already presented.
Well, if we publish that, you folks okay with it?
I'm gonna find the link and put it in the chat box.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
There's on that topic, there's one of the other communications channels we have is the weekly post. It's a weekly e-newsletter where I try to compile different events and workshops that are happening across the state. And the more you folks send me, the more I can amplify your events and whatnot. But I just think off the top of my head, I always see the Cheshire County Conservation District's workshop to prepare their folks on how to use those rental machines. So if there's other counties that would like me to share that information, please just send me an email and I'll try to do my best.
That's super constructive. Thank you, Josh. Other questions or comments for the Farm Bureau? Looks like Bob is, looks like you were moving to unmute yourself, Bob. Oh, okay. No other questions. All right. I guess we're all Zooming so long now that we start looking for, oh, there's a clue. There's a human doing something. Oh boy. Well, really thorough information from the Farm Bureau, and Bob and Tara, thank you so much for what you brought. And Kyle has left us doing other things that he's got to do. He sounds like he has quite a list to get ready for his last professional development workshop and whatnot. So as a closing note, I think I'd like to remind us that we did start out with Kyle. So if you're interested in doing some volunteer time with him, get a hold of him, send him an email. And Donna's not alone in wanting to thank our speakers for tonight. It was a very meaningful show. Thank you all the way around. We could have a 2.0. Dick did say it's the end of season 1. We're looking at starting season 2 now, and we can have the 2.0 version and have, like, the All-Star Show and the Best of the Farm Bureau show, and other guests come back with all the titles that we're used to on our favorite TV programs that we follow. Anything else for the greater good? And closing comments from you, Mr. Lutz. You're on mute. There you go.
There we go. No, this was great. We had a couple counties get their budgets slashed. We really need to spend some time working with legislators.
We do.
This year, we've come up with a schedule so different counties can have legislative tours, and we're going to help fund that. So legislators will see taxpayers benefiting from districts. Legislators are really good at counting noses. And so we need to take them around the state and have them count. They're very good at that. So hopefully that'll take off, and that'll be great. So we will be inquiring of the Farm Bureau of some more hints and techniques that we can borrow from them. And Bob and Tara, we're going to be bending your ear to find, you're going to be bending our ear on how we should do things more efficiently. So there's a lot of government funding that's being considered, and hopefully that'll come to the conservation districts so we can get out and help farmers more. We need to interact with them more. So this was a good start, or a good continuance of what we've been doing.
Looking forward to season 2, we should have Donna put on her to-do list to make sure that we get to have as a guest the new executive director that you have somehow coming out of the ether sometime this summer. So there's a guest that we'd love to meet.
Starting interviews on Friday, so.
Good. Well, keep us up to date on that. Anything else from anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to give a great shout out to Dick Lutz for bringing this forum to the fore. I think it's a terrific opportunity to develop our partnership. And I think the partnership is the wave of the future. I think as tonight's exhibit exceptionally, but others have also, that Zoom In on Conservation is an opportunity to expand our network. And that's the future of NHACD, is because I'm disappointed that we don't have more representatives from various districts in attendance, but these are going to be recorded and presented on our website for future viewing. And I think that this is all great. Thank you, Dick, and all the guests.
Thanks, Tom.
I just put the link up for the equipment rentals page in the chat window so you guys can copy that.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Very much,
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Be well.